Hello, everyone. Today we will have the pleasure to talk with Anna Weissensteiner. She's originally from Austria and she is currently making the role as a COO in Startup Guide, which is a creative content company, book publishing company, and they define themselves as the Lonely Planet for entrepreneurs, right? And as well, they are really, really interesting tools for startups, investors, and showing the entire ecosystem in different parts of the world. So this conversation will be really nice. So we will talk today about the experience of Anna, her personal story, and all about the business potentially and the future of the business, and also maybe about her own startup that is what she's currently developing in parallel of working with the Startup Guide. So it will be a really nice episode. So welcome, Anna. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Ricardo. Thank you very much for the invitation. Very happy to be here today.
Yeah, thank you very much. By the way, how was your summer? Since we are
My
just
summer was nice, actually.
good.
I spent 2 months in Austria, in the mountains where I'm usually from. And since we with Startup Guide went remote first, currently this was also a really nice option now to work here more closer to my family. And yes, really enjoyed it being a little bit in the fresh air and up in the mountains.
Great, great. So you walk a lot, right? Every day was a lot of kilometers, or how is the how it is?
I do enjoy mountain sports a lot. So of course, in the weekends we did some tours and we did some things to explore and visited several like mountain tops and lakes. So this was really nice.
Good. So now talking more about your personal journey into what you're currently doing in with the Startup Guide and your startups. It's like how do you define yourself and what is your background? So how do you arrive to the current role that you are making? Yeah.
How do I define myself? So I'd say I'm a very intuitive person and usually also very positive. I try to live and also experience life and work and relationships to the fullest. As said, I grew up in the south of Austria in the mountains, so I'm deeply connected also to outdoors and to nature. And I grew up in a bakery. So my father runs a bakery in the fourth generation, which also means that from being very little, I was always involved in the company. And from my childhood on, I got a very good sense, I think, what it means to run a business and to live a business, because I literally had my bedroom above the bakery and the flagship store. Everything was in the same building, and the bakery business is running kind of 24 hours a day. So you get a little sense about what it means to be like there and have a business running every day, all day. And I am now the COO of Startup Guide. And what I do currently is, I'd say, I navigate the ship together with Sissel, whereas I'm usually based in Portugal, where we have our second office. Also, the majority of the team is based in Portugal, and Sissel is based in Copenhagen in our headquarters.
Okay. And yeah, so you coming from a family running a bakery, and then you are working into the content creative market, working with the startups and so on. What did you learn from your father and the bakery to arrive like that? This has helped you on this role of COO. Do you have any things about that, or it's a complicated
Yes.
question maybe?
No, it's definitely not. Of course, there were many steps in between growing up in the bakery and then landing with Sissel in her startup guide. But definitely what helped me a lot, also growing up with I would say, entrepreneur as a father. I always call him that, although he wouldn't even know probably what the term exactly means. Helped me a lot to understand how important it is to be flexible, to be adaptive, to be more solution oriented, and like be open for different kind of things and situations. And I think that were like learnings I could definitely take to Startup Guide, which also helped me there, because Startup Guide is also a very dynamic company, a very dynamic project. We work in many different cultures with many different people around the world. And we are still kind of in a startup, how to say, kind of in this startup spirit, you know what I mean? So we are working very flexible, dynamic, like we really adjust to a situation as it comes. We are very open to pivot if it's needed to. So that is definitely something I also learned back home. So it was not such a
Great. So
complicated question. So
okay. Well, that's an important skills on these times with a pandemic and so on. So to be flexible and adaptive
yeah.
to the situations, right? And if we can go through your journey, how many, let's say you were working, what is your background and how do you arrive to work as a COO? So what brings you to it? And is something because you are passionate about operations and how to be, let's say, the right hand of the CEO, or it was just a coincidence, or how it worked?
So my background is business and management. I studied management, economics, and strategy. I studied in Vienna, then in Bangkok, where I did a program for international marketing in emerging countries. And then I did my master's degree in Lisbon. And in between, I worked for BMW in Munich in the strategy department to also gain a little bit of sense how it is to, or if it's really something I would consider working in a really like super steady traditional corporation like BMW, which is also a very great company. I did 2 other jobs in corporation and also gained some international experience in the embassy and chamber of commerce in Argentina, where we worked with different companies from Austria that wanted to export to Latin America. So we were responsible there for 3 countries. So from that experiences, I could figure that I am super interested in working with different cultures and working internationally, definitely, and working in an area that is very customer faced and sales driven also, and strategy focused. And I met Sissel in Lisbon by coincidence. It was really not planned. We were introduced via email via a friend of both of us, and basically met up for coffee. That was, I think, in 2017 or so. And
Okay.
I felt it, like we really connected. I didn't know Sissel before, and she told me about her startup guide and the first books she published. And I was very amazed also by her drive, by her personality. And she invited me to come to Berlin to work with her on a project that was still during my master's. And by working together, we had, like I said, a very good connection. And I started then, after finishing my master's, I started to join full-time in Lisbon, because we were just about to open also an office in Lisbon. So that was back then the 3rd office. The first one was in Berlin, the second one in Copenhagen, and then the 3rd one in Lisbon. And yeah, that was basically very by coincidence, as said. And the one reason why I, of course, wanted to join and why I wanted to continue working was because Startup Guide was back then also in the in a phase where there was so much potential. It was like just popping out guides in Europe, and that gained kind of a lot of traction and reach. And then we saw that there is so much potential also for other continents, for example. And it was just like fun working in that team, fun working with Sissel. I loved her passion, authenticity, and also like how caring she was. And I think that was also one of the reasons why I never thought of just like leaving in a sense back then, because I think it's super important. Besides having like a cool job that you like, that is one thing. But the other thing is that I find it super important to choose the right people to work for or with, because in the end, it will make up quite a good amount of time actually, and your energy. And yeah, there were always new projects and adventures. And when I then joined full time, we started basically the Asia journey, and I started to build up the brand in the Asian countries. So we did projects in Singapore, in Bangkok, in Japan, in 5 cities, and had partners up to the really interesting governmental organizations that wanted to, encourage and build up innovation and the startup ecosystems, and just do good also for entrepreneurs. So
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I think we have been mentioning, of course, a lot of we are been saying a startup guide, the startup guide, and so on. But maybe we should say more or less what is the current. How would you define a startup guide as a business, and what is the present, and maybe what is the future? How do you see it happening, or what are you trying to solve, and how are you going in that way? I mean, maybe it's too many questions I put together, but it's kind of talking about what is the current status and where are you going at the end, right? So,
yeah, definitely. But I can also, in case our listeners don't know so much about Startup Guide, I can also quickly touch upon the small story about how the whole project started.
Here, there are a lot of books.
So, so Startup Guide was founded by Siso Hansen when she was in her early 20s, and she moved to Berlin back then. And in those years, Berlin was considered as the entrepreneurial hub. Kind of every startup founder, every entrepreneur went to Berlin to basically build a business. And it was also supposedly very easy then to start a business there, right? And Sissel, after running some project already in Denmark, her next milestone was really founding a business in Berlin and moving there. However, it was in the end not so easy as expected. Coming to a new country, to different systems, new language, new like tax system in your own country is always a pain, but then imagine a German tax system. So that was basically then not how the whole thing was expected to be. But since Sissel is a very switched on personality, she was meeting with a lot of people, learned about the ecosystem, and basically wrote everything down in her own Google Drive. So having that saved for herself, who are the right people to talk with, what is important to know about Berlin when you want to start off, what does the city offer for founders, what do you have to consider when you start off in terms of, legal stuff. So basically when she had all that together, she talked with a friend, and the friend by coincidence was a publisher, and jested and said, hey, you should actually make a book about this. And that, in long story short, was how the Startup Guide was born. And the first book that came out was the Startup Guide Berlin. It was back then supported from Ernst & Young, who covered the production cost. And there was also a small launch event in Berlin where everyone that was featured in the book, the startups, the experts, the co-working spaces, they all showed up, of course. It was a really nice get together. And the book was sold out after 48 hours. And from that moment on, the Startup Guide grew organically. So more and more cities followed. And now we have published book for over 50 cities worldwide. Also countries. So we did, for example, Switzerland, Japan, Germany very recently on the German impact ecosystem, to really portraying the most innovative and impactful players around the world. And that is basically how everything started. And the mission actually didn't change so much. Because that was also your question, like what is the status quo? So for Startup Guide, it was always very important to close the information gap. That is often a problem for starting entrepreneurs, and basically making it possible for people anywhere to start a business, everywhere, to make just this nice entry point and open up some doors by offering this very handy and curated high quality resource about an ecosystem. And second, for us, we discovered over the work with different cities and ecosystem that is also very important for lesser known ecosystems to gain an international spotlight, because it was always the talks about Berlin and Silicon Valley and maybe London, you know, all like the big cities, capitals and innovation hubs. But there are so many, let's say, second tier cities out there where a lot of innovation actually comes from and is happening. So for us, it was then really important to help them to get this exposure, to help the cities and their key players and share the stories. And one example for that is, for example, Japan, because Japan is quite closed, or was quite closed a couple of years ago still towards the Western world in terms of, you know, what is happening in the ecosystem. Even when we started doing our work there in 2019, it was really a dispersed ecosystem, that there was not like a strong community, but there were a lot of initiatives and startups also, and a lot of very interesting and cool projects coming from, especially tech. And for us, we saw then how impactful the work we do is actually in that kind of ecosystems like Kyoto, Fukuoka, Sendai, you know, that these are cities that are you know, not as well known as Tokyo, for example, or back to Silicon Valley. So that was for us always really important to highlight them as well. So basically, summing up, it's really to guide people through different startup ecosystems, to build a first entry points and to democratize entrepreneurship in that sense. And it's changed a little bit right now. So we are growing, we are expanding, we are always asset, we are dynamic. So it never stops.
If I see that in the startupguide.com website, you have, of course, blogs, really nice content and blog posts. So this is something that you have been doing while releasing books, right, for every city. And is this something that is going to be more the future for you, to create more digital content, or how do you see it coming in the future, even now and the next months and years?
Exactly. Yes, we definitely try also to go away a little from only doing the book publishing. We're doing actually a lot of things already besides the book publishing only. And that is also why I meant that our purpose or mission changed slightly. So for us, our goal is to really amplify the voices of those that want to do sustainable innovation internationally. And this is why we first of all also created this startupguide.com, which allows us to spread our content digitally, which guarantees us a wider reach, obviously, and gives us also more flexibility. That's the first part. The second part is we created a data platform. It's called impact index. And impact index features the most impactful startups. So we developed a methodology that really ranks startups according to their impact. And it can be compared a little to Forbes 500.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Right? If that is maybe something to make it easier to understand. Besides Impact Index, we are hosting a conference, a sustainability conference now on the 26th of October in Denmark. It's called Impact the Future. And it's going to be all about sustainability in business, sustainability in leadership, in cities. We have a really, really nice and high profile speaker agenda. And this is basically all the little blocks basically that together then make Startup Guide as it is now. So there's definitely now way more than solely the book publishing.
Got it. And in this process, I assume you have been creating a really interesting team with different skills and so on, right? So if someone wants to start, imagine a media company or a creative content company. So can you give some advice what team members are crucial and how do you see that process?
Yeah, so our team is very special, and also the selection process has been very steady actually over the last couple of years, I'd say, because we actually do put a great emphasis on the cultural fit and value this even more than having only like kind of the hard skills. We had some really good example also that validated exactly that this is the right approach for us. So we do, of course, hire according to the position, you know, what skills are needed. Mm-hmm. But first and foremost, the fit and personality and motivation of the person is more important to us to make the team complete, because one foul there can really influence the whole energy of a team, and that's quite powerful. And since we are kind of a small team, like with low hierarchy, it's very important that we very thoroughly select who is joining and what is the motivation, and does the cultural fit align with ours.
One of the what I was trying to question as well was like, imagine if you, well, right now, what is the roles that you have internally in the team that mm-hmm. are really core mm-hmm. to develop the books and to develop blog posts and make really nice content and the impact index happening? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a variety of different skilled people, which are all like on the same level, super important. We have our production manager, Egle, who is also with Startup Guide, like even longer than I am. She was starting, I think, 4 or 5 years ago. She is running the global production. She's like a very coordinated mind and basically working with all the freelancers around the world. And we work with over 150 freelancers per year for the book. So you can imagine what kind of coordination skill and also calm personality she has to be. Our design team is crucial, of course, because we need them to not only design the books and do the layouts, but also like Startup Guide has a very strong visual language as well. So it's very crucial that we have our design team set, and we are also super happy. Joanna, Kat, and Dani have been with us also like for over 3 years. So we have those roles that are very steadily going with us and growing with Startup Guide. And then, of course, marketing, content production, editors. Then we have all our global freelancers, which are not part of the core team of Startup Guide, but which are as much of team members as everyone, because we work with them on an international level. That means for every city that we do a book, we hire a local production team. This consists of photographers, journalists, project managers as well. So those guys are obviously also super important to make the book happen in the end.
Great, great. And how long is the time frame to make a book, for example, a project like a book? So
that is on average 8 months.
Yeah, so
it can be faster, but on average is like 8 months.
Yeah, it's a great production with a lot of people, so of course understandable. And do you, in all these years that you are working with a Startup Guide, do you have one story that could be interesting that maybe like someone read the Startup Guide and he started a business in the country that he was reading the book, or he did a good connection that bring him to the next level of his professional life or personal life? So do you collect some feedback like that, or yeah?
Yeah, definitely. We collect a lot of feedback also on like the effectiveness of the book and the level of inspiration. What is hard, however, to measure and to say is how many books based on reading the Startup Guys have founded a business, because the book usually serves people to really navigate around, so they wouldn't probably necessarily communicate back to us if they started just based on the Startup Guide. But we definitely got a lot of feedback in terms of inspiration, and also the courage that Startup Guide gave them to start off and to do the thing. And what is especially loved by people is our founders section. So the section where we have interviews with founders that successfully have established business already and started, or have, stories about failure as well. It's not always successful businesses that help and motivate and inspire. You also need to listen to failure, because that is where you can probably learn even more from. So this is definitely also the section that we get the most responses for, and positive feedback in terms of inspiration and helpfulness.
Okay. And so since you have a really vast network of, let's say, investors, government institutions, founders, and so on, you as a team, you as Anna, and of course your team has considered like learning a lot based on those stories and so on, I assume, right? Like you are basically collecting all these stories. Yeah. And you are as well are taking all this knowledge and applying it to a Startup Guide, I assume, right?
Yeah, we do. And what was also kind of a nice outcome of this from our team was actually when COVID happened, when we all went to lockdown, and when in 2020 the pandemic basically hit us all hard. Our team basically shared something that really came from the heart, which was that we actually had a lot of stories, and we had so much interfaces and connections to people and founders and organizations all over the world, that we wanted to share stories of people or organizations that during that time of the lockdown and the pandemic, where usually, everyone was basically smashed down in a sense and affected. We really wanted to share story that motivate and inspire people. And this is when we actually created our first digital magazine, which is called Flip. And in Flip, we really sourced and curated 8 founder stories from all over the world. So we have one in South Africa, Japan, we have Lisbon, where different organizations or people really took this crisis and pivoted and just said yeah, you can hit me, but I will stand up. And yeah, this is also what on the one side inspired our team, and then on the other side also motivated us to bring this out and share this with our audience and people.
Mhm. So, well, I was gonna make a question about what happens when COVID hit to the Startup Guide team. So I think you more or less answered it already, but maybe do you have any other, let's say, retrospective, like since we are already more than a year into this situation, so it's like, do you think you have learned something out of this experience that maybe can help someone else to move forward in their businesses or in their startups? Like,
Yeah, like of course, I think this time was hard for everyone because everyone was faced with so much insecurity or uncertainty back then. So we like nobody was quite sure what's going to happen with the economy, what's going to happen with all the regulations. We of course, with all our books, we have scheduled book launches and we have events in every city, which all of a sudden, were not happening again. We also had we were working with big partners that of course were affected themselves. So there were some struggles then, obviously, but I think what helped us a lot is that as a team, we decided to pull through that, which was very powerful. So we stepped back a little bit. We basically rearranged our working routines. We went back to fully remote. We established routines, to make this virtual working bearable and also works right now. So we set up several routines throughout the week to stay connected virtually. My colleague Egle established a meditation routine every Wednesday, for example. We did like virtual coffee chats and all that. And then, of course, we adapted. We tried to be flexible, so we couldn't have any more launch events. So we switched to having everything virtually. We did run the same events, actually, the same agendas like we did in person. We did run it virtually. We had breakout sessions, we had networkings, we had like different kinds of speakers. That it was just happening virtually in that sense. And even though maybe in the first couple of weeks when the pandemic hit, and everyone was kind of super uncertain about what's going to happen, I think we as a team really tried to pull through together and in the end made the best that we could out of the situation and just adjusted and adapted.
got it. Sounds really good. And okay, so in all this process, I assume as well you are evolving, right? Like as a person, professionally, and so on. So maybe if you can share with the audience if you have some books, podcasts, or any resources that are helping you on this. Of course, all the guides of a startup guide, I assume, but is there anything
Yeah.
else that you, as an operation manager, let's say, find really useful that is out there in podcast resources and so on? Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely, as you said already, read through the startup guides and especially hot tip, check the founder stories. Really, really cool, insightful. You can learn a lot. You can get inspired a lot. And then I would really like to ask you guys to check out our social media channels on that specific questions of podcasts and books, because our marketing manager Anastasia put together a really, really nice compilation of podcasts and books that we as a team basically voted for, and everyone shared some suggestions about their favorite must-reads and must-hears. So you should definitely check out Startup Guide on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook and check that out.
Good, good. Well, yeah, as you can see, I read some of the guides, but
Yeah,
they
I
are
saw
here.
it.
So yeah, they are really useful. Yeah, I'm even connecting with some of the founders of the guide and talking with them about their stories and so on. So it's really nice.
Cool.
Okay, imagine you need to start a business. I think we are gonna talk about that in a few minutes as well. Like, what would be, based on your experience of what you read in the guides and so on, what institutions someone or help should be looking for. It can be a mentor. So what would be your recommendation for someone wanting to start a startup? That it can be tech or it can be impact driven. In Europe, let's say, but because of course in every country could be different, but maybe there are some similarities in the European ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah, I must say it's really a little different from country to country. And I made the experience myself as I was starting my own business on the side in Austria, and it's totally different here than, for example, doing something in Portugal or doing something in Denmark. So there's all different kind of regulations and also institutions. But maybe as a general tip, I think that would apply for every country. I would always first check if the government or the city, depending on where you are, has some specific departments or support for startups. That's almost in every city. In some, it is really, really strong and really, really good and helpful. In some others, it's less. But that's always a good first entry point to at least learn what you need in terms of, all this not so fun bureaucracy and that everyone that does a business still has to do. It's not only about,
So you mean
only
about
fun things.
You mean about the font of legal and accounting and
Exactly,
finance?
usually also in our startups guides, you will find a lot of go-tos to the city organizations then that can help, where you find, okay, this is where you have to register, this is what you need, this is where you maybe have to go through that. So that would be like a first kind of tip and advice. And the second would be to really try to connect with people that did found something similar or not similar, depends really on the person and how you connect with, to learn from them and ask them questions.
Good. Thanks for information. Yeah, I know that at least in your guides you have a directory at the end, right? So it could be
Exactly,
interesting to explore. And of course, if the city where the person wants to start a business is in the startup guide, but I think so. Hopefully, yes. Good. Maybe we can switch a bit to talk about your current venture that you're trying to build and your new side, let's say project, that you are building. So maybe we can talk about that. Is okay?
Yeah, sure.
So what is this about? What is the name or yeah?
Yeah. So in very short, I said I grew up in a bakery in a fourth generation. So we are very kind of a traditional company. It's a bakery, and my great grandfather started it. So it's very kind of a very traditional business in that sense. I am super connected also to the bakery and the business. However, I went to foreign countries, different jobs from a young age already. And what I must say, what I still always missed, I think it's very obvious if you grow up in a bakery, is like really good bread from home. So what I and my dad always negotiated about, so how I can basically take as much bread as possible and store it that it's like as fresh as possible. So long story short, we came up with the idea to create a flour blend that is very similar, or that delivers a very similar, at most like the same bread as we have at home, only natural ingredients, and actually comes with real sourdough bread, sorry. That in the end you have a real Austrian sourdough bread with only natural ingredients. And the brand is called We Bread. And somehow it started as a small idea between me and my dad, and we tried it out with different friends and had some prototypes in the sense. And I got a lot of positive feedback, and friends said, hey, you should actually, you should sell this because it's really cool and it's so easy to make, because in 5 steps you can do your own bread. And that is how then We Bread was born. And I launched an online shop this summer, about 1.5 months ago. It's on webread.com. And yes, it has been a very exciting and fun journey so far as well. There's a lot of learnings that come with it. But first and foremost, I'm super happy to do it because it's really a project from the heart. And I think, it's on the one side connecting my family, the tradition of baking bread, the handcraft, but on the other side, the digital world and the internationality that I also live for. And I think if something really comes from the heart, then it's per se not wrong. So I'm very happy, and it's also nice to do that project as kind of a family project between my father and me.
Great, yeah, it's a nice project and all success with it. And yeah, as you said, it's the combination of 4 generations of, like you said, 4 generations, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
so okay, 4 generations knowledge plus the digital world. So that's a
Exactly.
good
That
combination.
finally it can wander out of the borders of Austria and not only stay inside. So I hope people will like it. We'll see. We are very in the like beginning phase.
Good. So you are basically, in the case of your customer target, is Austrians living abroad in Europe, or you are still trying to sell it in Austria? Or
Yeah. So yeah, you got it. Actually, it's really Austrians living abroad, but also people that have a very great affection for, can I say that? Great affection or great love for bread, and for also homemade bread. Because in our world right now, I feel, especially our generation and the peer groups, people value self-made homemade food, and they also like to engage with their foods and baking and cooking. But at the same time, we don't have so much time, and sometimes also not so much experience. And especially handling with sourdough can be very intimidating because, baking a sourdough bread from scratch requires different steps. It takes more days, and it can be quite complicated. So people would maybe from the beginning say, okay, no, it's like too much effort and too complicated. And with WeBread, I really try to make this so simple as possible. It's really, you wouldn't need like 10 minutes of actual like doings. Then the breads need to rest anyways. And yeah, to make it available for people all over Europe. But now we ship all over Europe, but now we try to focus on Austria and Germany first to build up the brand and to also get it in different kind of stores. We have some first B2B partnerships already where people can also connect with the product and get more traction as well.
okay,
And
so
yeah, we
you're
got nice
trying.
feedback because
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, it was a little delay. I said
Yeah,
we
that
got
is.
nice feedback because we implemented a simple QR code actually on the back of each bag of the flour blends, where you can with your phone basically directly get to the video how-tos that explain like step by step how you do the bread. And that was for many people here also that were not connecting bread so much with digital, very helpful, they said. So
Yeah, it looks really nice. I will explore the website and of course ideally make some orders
yes,
because
please.
so you should deliver to the Czech Republic then.
Yeah, we do.
Good. Okay, so neighbors of Austria, so it should be okay. 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 Yeah, so really exciting for you on this journey. So really nice job that you are doing with the Startup Guide and as well with Red now. So hopefully everything continues in a good path. So thank you very much
Yeah.
for your time today, Anna. I don't know if you have some final comments about in general in your journey as an operation person or COO, right? So because I assume you are doing more or less a similar role in your new startup, right? Or how do you feel on that?
Yeah, in Startup Guide, it's obviously a little bit more established in that sense, you know. It's like WeBread is really starting from scratch. Startup Guide is way more established, and yeah, but it's in both ways. I really love doing that. I really love working on those projects. I really love working with Startup Guide. By the way, Sister was one of the first one ordering from WeBread, so that was also quite nice that everything is so well connected in what we do with Startup Guide and overall. And yeah, maybe last thing to say is that I think maybe my connection broke now.
It's okay.
Sorry, I think I was out for a second or so.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It will connect it. The tool will connect it, so it should be okay.
Hello.
Yes, and you can I can hear you. It's
Hi,
okay.
Ricardo. I think. Can you repeat your question now? Because I think I was out for a second.
Yes, so I was mentioning if you have any last thoughts about your position as a COO, and if someone is working on a similar role, what are your recommendations how to grow in this role? Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely say like what works for me is to stay, especially in these times right now where we still are in very big uncertainty, I find in comparison, to stay open, to go a lot with your intuition, and to be also very attentive about what's happening around you, and to question things definitely, and to always value people first. I think that is what is very strong in Startup Guide as well, that we are very people focused company.
Great. So you mean that people is really important, because if not, there will be any guide or any results, right? So you need to keep that everyone is happy with their job and can move forward.
And no matter how big your team is, I think like source the people carefully that you work with, and have a good collaboration and relationship with them, definitely. And in terms of work, like operations and day-to-day work, my big advice is to just push and put away multitasking a lot and try to do more focused work. I feel that this is something that in our generation is definitely hard and is being forgotten sometimes in those positions that are sales related and customer conversation related.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting topic. I think we can stay here talking more about that. Sadly, we don't have too much time more, but basically, yes, like to have focused time is complicated. Maybe you should hide the phone and hide all the notifications. That's something you do, or how do you try to keep focus?
What I do, I usually plan my workday ahead. So I try to really plan, and then I also feel more calm. That works for me if I know what's more or less going to happen. Of course, there's always space for unknowns. But what I try, because my jobs, my daily responsibilities, they include a lot of, like calls, meetings, and conversations with clients or with the teams, and emailing. So there is a lot of back and forth. So what I try, despite having this as main, say, task or responsibilities, I always try to put like some deep work blocks into the calendar, and try to not forget how to like actually focus on things, because especially in our generation, as said, I think that we tend to do so much multitasking and get distracted not by only one thing, but by like 25 at the same time. And yes, I think that what helps me a lot, and I also will like continue doing that.
Yeah, that's a really nice advice. And yes, I try to apply the same, but of course, sometimes you cannot do it if some emergency appears. But yeah, it's ideally that would be the best case scenario. Yeah. So thank you very much, Anna. And maybe my last comment is if someone would like to reach you out and maybe ask for your advice or know more about the Startup Guide, or someone wants to do a Startup Guide in their city, so how can they approach you? Yeah.
Yeah, like very welcome. I would be happy to hear from you. Just reach out either via anna@startupguide.com or info@startupguide.com. You can also check out our homepage, startupguide.com, where you'll find all emails, and then of course our social media channels. So wherever you feel comfortable, you can reach out. If you're interested in hearing more about WeBread, I'm also reachable there on social media, we.bread, or anna@webread.com.
Yeah, sorry to forget to mention the bread lovers. So I forget to say, well, if someone wanted to have a good bread, so as well you have the connection. So. Good. Thank you very much, Anna.
Do not forget. Yeah. Do not forget to check out our posts on the podcast and books. Definitely, there's some really, really good picks from Cecil, from me, from Anastasia, from Egle. So
okay, so maybe the last point is like if you have to choose one of those podcasts, so what was your recommendation? Maybe just only one.
I thought you're gonna ask me maybe books, which would be easier in that sense.
Okay, so we switch the question to books.
How to Live Meaningful Lives is quite interesting. The 5 Temptations of a CEO is also quite interesting. And yes. No, so, I want you guys to really see the posts. I know where you want to get me.
You want more visitors in the website, right? So. Okay, so thank you very much, Anna. So, of course, everyone who can listen can go to startupguide.com and look for the books and podcasts. So that's the mystery of the episode, so that you can visit. So thank you very much for your time, all your advice, your stories. So success in the journey, and of course, hopefully the future will go better and better than it's already in a good way with all the books and all the content that you have provided to the world. Right?
Thank you very much for having me, and yeah, I wish you all the best as well. And I hope, and I'm sure that we stay in touch.
Of course. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.